In July 2015, the Taichung City Police Department in Taiwan received a missing person report from a 44-year-old woman named Yang. She stated that her 50-year-old boyfriend, Chen Jiangke, had been missing for over 10 days. Despite searching throughout Taichung, she couldn't find any trace of him, and all phone calls went unanswered. When filing the report, Yang provided a crucial piece of information. She deeply suspected that her ex-boyfriend, Zhang, still bitter about their past relationship, had murdered Jiangke. Yang explained that she and Zhang were originally a couple. Later, through a chance meeting, she met Jiangke and discovered that he was not only intelligent and articulate, but also treated her exceptionally well. In contrast, Zhang was always immersed in his work and paid little attention to her. Frustrated, she decided to break up with Zhang and start a new relationship with Jiangke. However, Zhang couldn't accept being abandoned. He repeatedly came to harass her, desperately hoping to reconcile, but Yang firmly refused. Zhang became so angry that he made threats like, "I will never forgive you two dogs." More suspiciously, during the period when Jiangke went missing, Yang noticed that Zhang had also suddenly disappeared, further convincing her that he had committed the crime and fled. Based on the complainant's statement, Zhang indeed had many suspicious points, causing the police to take the case seriously and focus their resources on finding him. At the same time, they also thoroughly investigated the circumstances before and after Jiangke's disappearance to rule out other possibilities. During this process, an unusual point was discovered. Jiangke had lost contact since June 27th, so why did Yang wait more than 10 days to report it? When the police expressed their doubts, Yang appeared extremely aggrieved. She insisted that Jiangke treated her exceptionally well, like family, and she had absolutely no motive to harm him. Yang clearly explained the reason for the delayed report. Initially, she wasn't too concerned because Jiangke worked at Master Hongru's casino, often entertaining card players all night, so his schedule was typically irregular. It wasn't until 2 days later that she truly felt something was wrong. Throughout the time her boyfriend was missing, Yang lived in a state of extreme anxiety. Fortunately, Jiangke's master, Yang Hongru, a man known for his loyalty to friends, was eager to help. He not only continuously comforted her, but also personally drove her around to search everywhere. Only after scouring every possible location without results did they decide to go to the police station to file a report. The police determined that although Yang's personal relationships were somewhat complicated, logically, her speculations didn't raise any major suspicions. The current situation suggested that Zhang appeared to be the only suspect, and finding him as soon as possible became the top priority. After more than 10 days of diligent investigation and questioning numerous witnesses, the police finally found Zhang living in a location quite far away. When questioned, Zhang admitted that being abandoned by Yang had caused him to go through an extremely painful period, but he insisted he never harbored intentions of revenge. The previous threats were just impulsive statements made in anger. Zhang further explained that he had now completely moved on from the shadows of the past and started a new life in another city. He had changed his old phone number and limited contact with friends, which inadvertently created the false impression that he had committed a crime and fled. Zhang appeared very straightforward, even directly stating that he was 100% unrelated to this case, and if they didn't believe him, they could come investigate any time. The police investigation also showed that on June 27th, Zhang was definitely not in Taichung. His phone location and call records were solid, proving he was not at the scene and couldn't have had time to commit the crime. With the only suspect eliminated, the investigation no longer had a clear direction. The police concluded that there wasn't sufficient evidence to determine that Jiangke had been murdered. They could only offer Yang a few brief words of comfort and suggest she go home and wait for new information. The situation unexpectedly took a new turn when, on July 12, 2015, the Taichung Police Department received another missing person report. Mr. Lai Guangxiong, 72 years old, had gone to Pingdong County with a friend a few days ago, but remained untraceable. His family completely lost contact with him and, fearing the worst, urgently requested police assistance in the search. Despite his advanced age, Mr. Lai maintained a regular routine of martial arts and qigong practice, remaining a healthy elderly man with a clear mind. The day before the trip, he specifically told his family that his friend Hongru had invited him to Pingdong, with plans to return the same day, with no intention of staying overnight. Early the next morning, Mr. Lai eagerly set off, but he didn't return that evening as planned, and his phone was unreachable. Initially, the family wasn't too worried, thinking he might have decided to stay in Pingdong for the night because he was enjoying himself. It wasn't until 2 days later, with still no news from him, that the family started to feel something was wrong. Regarding Hongru, the travel companion, the family only knew that he was Mr. Lai's card-playing friend, apparently with a good relationship, but they didn't know where he lived and had no contact information. The police noticed several suspicious points in this case. If Mr. Lai truly went with Hongru, why was there no move from Hongru to report or search for him after so many days of disappearance? It's impossible for both individuals to get lost simultaneously. With these unusual signs, they decided first to review surveillance camera footage to determine Mr. Lai's movements on that fateful day. The surveillance footage showed, early that morning, Mr. Lai rode his electric bicycle away from home. About 15 minutes later, he turned into an alley out of camera view and completely disappeared. Notably, it wasn't until the next day that the electric bicycle reappeared from the alley, but the rider had been replaced by a stranger. This person rode Mr. Lai's bicycle straight to the high-speed train station, abandoned it, and departed on foot. Police immediately arrived at the station to investigate and discovered a horrifying scene. 3 half-burned incense sticks were placed in front of the bicycle with scattered ceremonial paper money around. Someone had clearly performed a ritual for the deceased right by Mr. Lai's electric bicycle. This immediately gave the investigators a bad feeling. Why would someone burn ceremonial money? Could it be that Mr. Guangxiong was no longer alive? The investigators reasoned, if Mr. Lai truly planned to go to Pingdong that day, it's almost impossible he would choose to travel by electric bicycle for such a long distance. More reasonably, he would have used the electric bike to reach Hongru's house, then switched to another form of transportation to go to Pingdong. Following this line of reasoning, the police carefully reviewed surveillance footage at intersections and made a breakthrough discovery. Indeed, the images showed Mr. Lai riding his electric bike to Hongru's house. An hour later, a luxurious Lexus SUV appeared leaving the alley. The driver was none other than Yang Hongru, and on the passenger seat was a man. Notably, this person wore a baseball cap, head bowed, body limp against the seat, looking as if in deep sleep. After the family's confirmation, there was no doubt. It was the missing Mr. Guangxiong. Hongru drove Mr. Guangxiong to the Gukeng rest stop and paused for a while. Suspiciously, throughout this time, Mr. Lai never left the vehicle, maintaining a limp posture in the passenger seat. "We're analyzing the situation," an investigator shared. "It's very likely that at that point, he had been given a mixture of sedatives and muscle relaxants, causing him to fall into a deep stupor." The police continued monitoring the footage and made another shocking discovery. On that fateful day, Hongru's car had moved in the direction of Zhongheng's road and returned around 5 p.m. Notably, when the car returned, the passenger seat, where Mr. Guangxiong had previously sat, was completely empty. This was clearly a very suspicious detail. 2 people left, but only Hongru returned alone. All signs pointed in one direction. Hongru very likely did something cruel to Mr. Lai. During the investigation, police probed for information from those living near Hongru and discovered a terrifying truth. He was a notorious figure in the area. Although 64 years old, Hongru was an extremely violent individual with a prior prison record. With his rough and violent character, he frequently bullied the neighbors around him. Hongru often boasted that in his youth, he worked with wild animals and knew how to concoct sedatives. When facing disagreements, he didn't hesitate to threaten neighbors with terrifying words like, "Believe it or not, I'll poison your entire family." Most residents in the area, primarily elderly people, were too scared to resist, only seeking ways to avoid him. Even when the police merely mentioned Hongru's name, the neighbors were so frightened they dared not speak. Through investigation, the police discovered that when younger, Hongru did indeed work illegally breeding wild animals. Previously, he had a criminal record for using sedatives to kidnap women. And on the day of the crime, Mr. Guangxiong was also stupefied in the car. This information further confirmed suspicions against Hongru. The police decided to confront this villain directly. Faced with the police's unexpected visit, Hongru was extremely uncooperative, beginning to make a fuss after barely 2 sentences, with an extremely poor attitude. In front of his house were 2 surveillance cameras. When police wanted to check the recordings, Hongru said the cameras were purely decorative, with no storage function. When investigators asked who was in the car that day, he couldn't provide an explanation. When asked about Mr. Guangxiong, Hongru even claimed he didn't know him at all, then angrily sent the visitors away. The police didn't argue much with him. Currently, the evidence wasn't sufficient to arrest Hongru. It was better to continue investigating and wait for a search warrant before confronting him again. But unexpectedly, as soon as the police left, he immediately fled. However, Hongru's escape was tantamount to indirectly admitting his crime. Now they just needed to focus on finding him. The case was basically solved. So why did Hongru flee to Tainan, and why did he kill Mr. Guangxiong? On July 10th, upon returning, the passenger seat was empty, with no sign of Mr. Lai. Could Hongru have disposed of the body in a wilderness area? The police believed this possibility was low. Mr. Lai's body had not yet been discovered, meaning the corpse was either dumped far from roads or buried in a large hole. Both methods would be very time-consuming, and on the day of the crime, excluding travel time, Hongru had at most 4 hours to dispose of the body. Additionally, he was already 64 years old, and Mr. Lai was an elderly man with a large build. Both in terms of time and physical strength, he couldn't have completed hiding the body with such high discretion in such a short time. So when did he begin disposing of the body? After returning to Taichung that day, his Lexus never left the city again. He himself was always active around his home, not going elsewhere. This question truly puzzled everyone. After several days of thinking, investigators reached 2 important conclusions. 1. Hongru truly didn't have time to dispose of the body, so someone else helped him. He had at least one accomplice. 2. Hongru's Lexus didn't leave the city area afterward, so the accomplice used another vehicle to dispose of the body. The police immediately thoroughly checked all vehicles under the names of Hongru and his relatives and friends. Sure enough, they discovered another car they hadn't previously noticed. Besides the imported Lexus, Hongru also owned a domestically produced car. On that day, after Hongru returned home, this car left his alley. The driver was the person who had previously abandoned Mr. Lai's electric bicycle. It seemed this person was Hongru's accomplice. The police quickly found basic information about this person. He shared the same surname as Mr. Guangxiong but wasn't related. This Mr. Lai normally had a very close relationship with Hongru. That day, he drove the domestic car straight to near Hualien County. By reviewing the surveillance footage, the police quickly found the domestic car. Mr. Lai had abandoned it in the suburbs and covered the vehicle with dry grass. Now, everything fit together. The investigators finally reconstructed the true process of the crime. On July 10th, after Mr. Guangxiong arrived at Hongru's house, he was immediately sedated by him. Then, to deceive people, Hongru drove his imported Lexus, taking the unconscious Mr. Lai out of the city, pretending to go on a trip, and killed him on the way. But after killing Mr. Lai, he didn't dispose of the body immediately, but placed it in the trunk and brought it home for processing. After processing the body, he had Mr. Lai drive his other domestic car to dispose of it. After disposing of the body, Mr. Lai abandoned the car in the suburbs and returned that night. Therefore, it wasn't until the next day that he had time to deal with Mr. Guangxiong's electric bicycle. Now, the case grew increasingly complex. The police had to simultaneously track 2 suspects, Hongru and Mr. Lai. The domestic car that Mr. Lai used was still in fairly good condition, at least about 70% new. The police believed Hongru had fled to Tainan with no chance of returning to retrieve this car, but Mr. Lai might regret abandoning it and return. It seemed they needed to divide into 2 groups, simultaneously pursuing Hongru and Mr. Lai. The police installed surveillance equipment near the parking spot and left a few officers on guard there. The rest immediately went to Tainan to find traces of Hongru. The police successfully located Hongru's imported Lexus through surveillance, tracking it all the way to Tainan. But since arriving in Tainan, the car had disappeared. Hongru apparently realized the Lexus might have been tracked by the police, and both he and the car had vanished. However, he had previously abandoned the domestic car. The police believed that no matter how generous a person is, they couldn't abandon both cars under their name within a few days. He likely sold the Lexus. The police immediately looked up the ownership information of the Lexus through its license plate. Indeed, the car had been transferred the previous day. The unit handling the transfer was an auto repair shop. Investigators immediately rushed to the repair shop to learn more about the situation. They presented Hongru's photo for the manager to identify. The manager confirmed that the person who came to sell the car 3 days ago was indeed this man. He appeared very anxious, repeatedly asking when he could receive the money. But the car transfer procedure would take at least 2 days, so it wasn't completed until the previous day. The sale money had just been transferred to his account. The person had not yet come to collect it. This information excited the police. Next was very simple. Just keep watch at the repair shop and arrest Hongru immediately when he came to collect the money. But after 2 days of watching, the police still didn't see Hongru. The person who came to collect the money was a suspicious-looking stranger. He lurked in front of the repair shop furtively for about 15 minutes before entering, and when presenting his documents to the shop staff, he kept looking around constantly. Following the police's prior instructions, the shop staff told him to have Hongru himself come for the money. After being rejected by the shop staff, this person didn't say anything, just rubbed his nose and left. The police hurriedly followed this person, checked the information of this mysterious man, and discovered he was surnamed Wu and had a relationship with Hongru. It seemed very likely that Hongru had gone to seek refuge with him. The police continuously monitored for nearly a week. Wu normally only moved around his residence, not even driving frequently. It wasn't until a few days later that he finally drove out. It seemed Wu wasn't an easy target either. He had a strong sense of counter-surveillance. He first drove around Tainan City a few times, and only after confirming nothing unusual did he step on the gas and speed toward the suburbs. Fortunately, Wu didn't notice the police's large-scale surveillance operation. He drove straight to the mountainous outskirts of Tainan, going farther and farther, quickly leaving the coverage area of surveillance cameras. To avoid losing track, the police simultaneously deployed drones for aerial surveillance. But despite their thorough preparation, they still lost him. The investigators were unfamiliar with the road conditions in Tainan's outskirts, and after Wu skillfully drove through a few curves, the police found they had lost his trail. The police could only intensify their drone aerial surveillance. Finally, they discovered that Wu's car had stopped at the end of a mountain road, but the person had disappeared. The problem was that it was a deserted road section with absolutely no buildings around. So where could Wu have gone? Surely not underground. The police once again used drones to repeatedly survey the area. Finally, they discovered a large pigeon coop deep in the forest. This pigeon coop was nestled deep within a large forest beside the road, completely invisible from the roadside. It seemed Wu had gotten out of the car and walked through the forest to reach the pigeon coop. This appeared to be Hongru's hiding place. It was sufficiently discreet. The pigeon coop could only be reached on foot, and it was surrounded by forest, making the terrain extremely complex. If they searched now, they might be detected before reaching the coop. If Hongru escaped along the trail deep into the mountains, finding him again would be even more difficult. After much hesitation, the police decided to abort the arrest operation that day. They believed they needed to gather sufficient police forces to surround the pigeon coop from 4 sides to ensure no mistakes. But time was running out for the police. At that time, Typhoon Doyen was set to make landfall within 3 days. After the typhoon hit, the situation could become more difficult to control. The arrest operation needed to be executed before Typhoon Doyen arrived. The next day, after much coordination, the police divided into 5 routes and took action. They ambushed from early morning, successfully completing the encirclement search, and conducted a comprehensive search of the people in the pigeon coop. Inside the coop was only Wu's wife. She was completely surprised that the police could find this place and was very astonished. Indeed, she wondered how they could possibly find it. They thought this place was very secret, but unexpectedly the police still found it. When entering, why didn't they see him? Then in the room, his clothes were hung very neatly. He was somewhat excessively clean, with clothes hung very neatly. Everything here was in good condition. No one had slept on the bed. The police thought, this isn't right. He's been outside for a week, hasn't gone out at all, and if he had gone out, the police would have seen him because there's only one road. The person had vanished. When unable to find Yang Hongru in the house, a police officer holding something pointed to the sky, blurting out confusion about not being able to find the villain despite thorough searching. During this confusion, Wu's wife appeared anxious and asked the police what they should do. During the search, the police noticed many deity shrines in the house. To show respect, they also lit incense and bowed to the shrines. The woman saw the police burning ceremonial money outside, possibly a tactic to lure the suspect or show respect. After some interaction and spiritual rituals, the woman seemed to have revealed important information about Yang Hongru's true hiding place. Actually, if the woman hadn't revealed the specific location, the police wouldn't have known where to look. The area appeared to be a pigeon coop. It's hard to believe that in such a place, someone would be hiding. Upon inspection, the police discovered something unusual. Locks and iron chains that should be outside were inside, indicating someone had locked themselves from within. Inside the coop was pitch black. The police, guns drawn, entered an area resembling a business room and found Hongru hiding in a corner. When discovered, Hongru reacted aggressively, asking the police why they were barging into his house. The police saw Hongru sitting dazed there, with a mosquito net and an electric fan in the space, showing he had prepared to hide there for a long time. This pigeon coop was very large, housing hundreds or even thousands of birds. Due to the coop's vast size, Hongru had chosen this place as his hideout. He had actually lived inside the pigeon coop and locked himself in to avoid detection. Initially, no one thought to check the pigeon coop, as it's not a typical place someone would hide. That's why it took half a day of searching before the police officers discovered Hongru hiding in this unremarkable pigeon coop. At this point, Hongru was still very arrogant. Even up to the final moment of being escorted to the police car, he innocently asked why they were arresting him, what they wanted with him, trying to use his skilled acting to deceive. As a veteran criminal, perhaps he couldn't understand that under modern advanced administrative techniques and omnipresent surveillance cameras, his face had long been exposed. This time, he couldn't escape. After many days of pursuit, the police finally successfully arrested the suspect Hongru. Next, they still had to resolve two issues: Hongru's motive for killing Mr. Guangxiong, and most importantly, the whereabouts of Mr. Guangxiong's body. But this Hongru was very cunning. The police conducted multiple rounds of interrogation without effect. He first claimed he didn't know Guangxiong at all. When the police showed him surveillance photos from the day of the trip, asking who was in the passenger seat, he had nothing to say and just remained silent. In short, he mainly denied the crime. The police believed Hongru had an antisocial personality and was extremely arrogant. Dealing with this type of person required concrete evidence. Wanting him to voluntarily confess truthfully was nearly impossible. Just when everyone was feeling helpless, the police guarding the domestic car sent good news. The accomplice who helped Hongru dispose of the body, Mr. Lai, had been arrested. He indeed regretted abandoning the car and sneakily returned to take it, only to be caught red-handed by the police on guard. This news was like snow in midsummer. It didn't matter if Hongru wouldn't talk, as long as Mr. Lai was willing to confess, they could still clarify the case. But the interrogation of Mr. Lai wasn't smooth either. This man sat in the interrogation room appearing extremely frightened, stammering, refusing to speak. He said he was very afraid of Hongru because previously Hongru had told him not to talk loosely, or he would poison his entire family. Mr. Lai said he was so scared at the time that he couldn't speak. He believed that he was now dead for sure. Even if not sentenced to death, Hongru would certainly not spare him. The police told him that Hongru was detained in custody and could no longer harm him. After much persuasion from the police, Mr. Lay's mood finally stabilized, and he honestly confessed everything he knew. According to Mr. Lay's testimony, after retirement, Mr. Guangxiang's only hobby was playing cards. Hongru was one of his main card-playing partners. Initially, the two were evenly matched when playing cards, and their relationship was very good. But from June this year, for unknown reasons, Guangxiang suddenly began continuously losing money, almost never winning. After observing a few times, he discovered that Hongru always had small movements when playing. Guangxiang was very angry, asserting that Hongru was cheating. Afterward, he frequently went to Hongru's house demanding the return of the money he had previously lost. Hongru naturally couldn't pay him back. Guangxiang was very resentful and began telling everyone around that this Hongru was a cheater, warning them not to play cards with him. Hongru was essentially the gambling house owner. Wasn't Guangxiang's talk damaging his business? Therefore, Hongru deeply hated Guangxiang. He had repeatedly told Mr. Lai that he must kill Guangxiang. At that time, Mr. Lai thought he was joking and asked, "Guangxiang has a large physique and has practiced qigong. What can you do to him?" Hongru laughed contemptuously and said, "Training means nothing. I'll directly give him sedatives. Killing him is as easy as turning my hand." On the day of the crime, after dinner, Mr. Lai admitted being called to Hongru's house, but he continuously emphasized that he didn't participate in the murder. Hongru only said there was some waste that needed to be disposed of in the mountains and wanted him to drive a trip. The waste Hongru mentioned was a blue metal drum, which Hongru had already placed in the trunk of the domestic car. That drum was very heavy, but Mr. Lai didn't know what was inside. He understood clearly that Hongru was a vicious and cruel person and dared not say no. Therefore, that evening, Mr. Lai followed Hongru's orders, driving to Mount Heiwan in Taipei County, near the Zhongheng's road section close to Shulin, Hualien. He only remembered that after driving past a curve up a bridge, he threw the drum from the bridge. The next day, Hongru again asked him to deal with Mr. Lai's electric bicycle. It was then that Mr. Lai began to feel something was wrong. He knew Guangxiang must have been killed by Hongru, and himself, unexpectedly, had become an accomplice to a murderer. He felt very regretful, so when returning to the high-speed train station, he secretly lit incense for Guangxiang's electric bicycle. Everything matched up. Mr. Lai's testimony completely aligned with the police's previous speculations. The police immediately had Mr. Lai drive them, asking him to point out where he disposed of the drum. But on the highway from Taichung to Hualien, similar junctions and large bridges totaled nearly 100 locations. After many days, Mr. Lai still couldn't clearly remember the specific location. Searching from morning until noon, the police car circled the area several times without results. After searching continuously for days, having almost completely searched the entire Zhongheng's road section in Hualien, they gradually found 5 metal drums. Through identification, a small blue drum was indeed the one Mr. Lai had discarded. The moment the drum was opened, the family recognized the checkered shirt on Mr. Lai's body. The killer had broken his waist and stuffed him inhumanely into the drum. Seeing the elderly man treated so inhumanely, the family immediately broke into tears. Through DNA testing, the police finally confirmed that the deceased in the drum was indeed Mr. Guangxiang, who had been missing for many days. The murderer had been caught, the victim's body had been found, and the investigation of this case concluded. The police also finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, besides this blue metal drum, what was in the other drums? When the second drum was opened, the police officers repeatedly rubbed their eyes and ears, wanting to confirm they weren't seeing or hearing wrong. But the truth appeared before them. In the second drum was another male corpse, also stuffed upside down into the drum. The method was identical. Fortunately, the remaining 3 drums contained no bodies. Now, their urgent task was to quickly identify the second victim. The police began investigating the second victim. Finally, they found relevant information about the deceased in the database. Chen Zhangke, male, 59 years old, worked as a land broker in Taichung City before his death, missing for half a month. Was he also killed by Hongru? At this point, the police found a missing person record from half a month ago in the database. Wasn't the missing boyfriend that Hongru reported half a month ago this Jung Kae? Reading further, they discovered the report clearly stated Jung Kae worked at Hongru's gambling house. Wait, this deceased person also knew Hongru. The police now discovered that Hongru was actually Jung Kae's master. Could it be that this man even killed his own disciple? Same type of drum, same inverted placement, same method of sedation then killing, less than 1,000 feet apart. This Hongru was too cunning. So why did he kill Jung Kae? Now, with evidence like a mountain, Hongru could no longer deny it. Therefore, the police once again interrogated Hongru. Initially, Hongru still refused to speak, but under intense interrogation pressure, he began to reveal some fragmented case details. After several hours of intellectual duel, the police finally pieced together the approximate truth from Hongru's confessions. Jung Kae was said to be Hongru's disciple, but in reality, he was just someone who helped him beat others, responsible for helping Hongru entertain card-playing friends. Because he frequently entered and exited Hongru's house, all the card-playing friends around Hongru knew him. One evening, Jung Kae and Hongru were having a late meal, drank a few glasses of wine, and he began to forget himself and boast to Hongru about his girlfriend. He said she was young, beautiful, good to him, and very wealthy. He himself was also following his girlfriend in the land business, with a monthly cash flow of tens of thousands. Hearing these words, Hongru suddenly understood. Previously, he had discovered that Jung Kae had a large cash flow in his bank account, frequently receiving amounts from thousands to tens of thousands. At that time, he thought this disciple was secretly working on his own behind his back, not realizing it was because his girlfriend was a wealthy woman. Jung Kae clearly didn't consider Hongru an outsider. He was just drunk and showing off to his big brother. He couldn't imagine that this big brother Hongru would develop the intention to kill him because of this. Hongru's thinking was very simple. Since young Hongru was a wealthy woman, why not turn Jung Kae's girlfriend into his own, getting both money and a person? Of course, to do this, he first had to eliminate this disciple who was in the way. Conveniently, this disciple also seemed quite wealthy. Therefore, on June 27th, Hongru invited Jung Kae to travel together, secretly gave him a drink with sedatives, and killed him while he was in deep sleep. Then, he stuffed the body into a metal drum, sealed it carefully, and drove to near the Zhonghengs Road in Hualien County to dispose of the body. With Jung Kae suddenly disappearing, Hongru, pretending to know nothing, immediately filed a report. Hongru took this opportunity to pretend to care and approached Jung Kae's girlfriend, appearing very attentive. At that time, Jung Kae's girlfriend absolutely couldn't have imagined that the seemingly deeply affectionate brother beside her was actually the murderer of her boyfriend. By now, Hongru had become arrogant. Initially, he still had some worries, fearing his crime would be exposed. Unexpectedly, more than 10 days passed without incident. Since his method of murder was so safe, why not do it once more? Thus, Guangqiong, who always pressed him to return money, became his next target. In this way, the cruel Hongru, within 16 days, twice consecutively killed 2 people, placed their bodies in metal drums, and discarded them in the outskirts near Zhonghengs Road, Hualien County. He was so confident in his murder actions that he didn't even want to take a few more steps when disposing of the bodies. The metal drums containing the 2 bodies were less than 1,000 feet apart. However, this veteran criminal never expected to be caught so quickly. After being arrested, Hongru refused to admit his crimes. But faced with the police's comprehensive evidence, he couldn't provide any explanation. Finally, Hongru was sentenced to 2 death penalties in the first instance trial. The appeals and retrial both upheld the death sentences. Although he still had the right to appeal, the likelihood of his sentence being reviewed was no longer high. His life had no more value, or in other words, he had long lost the qualifications to be human. For money and women, he could unhesitatingly kill Jung Kae, who had followed him for many years. As a gambling house owner, he could shamelessly cheat at cards. When discovered by Mr. Lai, He became angry from embarrassment and killed him. In the end, Hongru had to face the punishment of the law. It's only a pity that 2 lives were murdered by him and stuffed into metal drums. The only thing they left behind were the scratch marks from their fingers inside the metal drums before their deaths, and that is the case for today. Thank you for following along, and see you in the next case.